This is the DTV Digest, the podcast that brings you news and reviews of films which didn't make it to the cinema. And now, here's your host, Mike Parkin.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the DTV Digest. I'm your host, Mike Parkin, and joining me tonight is Richard Hawes.
Hello, everybody.
This week, we've got four main reviews to throw at you. We're going to kick off with The Modern Way. Then we have When Darkness Falls, Martyrs Lane, and Gatlopp, Hell of a Game. Our short shot is Gabriel, and our DTV throwback is Ambulancen. So without further ado, let's crack on. Our first review then is The Modern Way. Danny is a young skinhead struggling with her home life and has fallen in with the wrong crowd. It's up to Terry Harrison, an old friend of the family's, to help her out. Okay, Rich. So on certain levels, I think there's something to commend this film. In this, you know, it's kind of an updated Quadrophenia. You know, that's what it's going for. So it's this sort of
tipping its hat, isn't it? Definitely.
It's tipping its hat, especially with the acting. To that sort of film. There's a bit of This Is England in there, of course, you know, set during the 80s. And it is a period when, you know, there were all these sort of rival factions, you know, sort of centered around music. I mean, it's funny, actually. I changed schools in 1982. I'd been up north, came down to Essex, and it was the first time I'd come across mods. Mods didn't exist in the Northeast, but they were rife, you know, and most of my class were mods, apart from like about 5 metalheads, and that was about it. Uh-huh. It was that sort of split. So, you know, I can certainly see that, you know, the sort of the appeal was still there. You know, so Quadrophenia was still, you know, it's a cult hit on video. The soundtrack and the Who, Tommy, that sort of thing was, you know, it was all very much there. The Jam, Madness, you know, all of that still in the air. So you know, I kind of appreciated, you know, the setting of what this film was doing. But my God, did I hate the script? Did I hate the words coming out of everyone's mouths? They were absolutely awful.
That's interesting because I don't agree at all.
The number of times somebody said, "Oh, what was it now? Oh, you know, we've hit the jackpot," or something like that. You know, it was all the time. It just seemed to be sort of. Do you remember The Young Ones?
Yeah.
Right. Rick Mayall's character, in the sort of Young Ones book, he wrote a script that he performed in the sixth form, and that's the sort of level of dialogue that was coming out of these people. It was that sort of thing. It made me laugh. Anyway, over to you, Rich. What are your initial thoughts on The Modern Way?
I really liked it a lot more than I thought I was going to. I thought I wasn't going to. I was kind of like, not sure. Well, I wasn't sure quite what it was going to be. Then I sort of read the synopsis and I was like, ugh. And, you know, straight to video and stuff. I had sort of the worst in mind. And I thought, I didn't watch that Steve Burkoff Brighton thing, but I did think, is it going to be like something? I mean, you know, because you guys said, that was terrible and stuff. And I was thinking, is it going to be that sort of, you know, really awkward, you know, just not funny kind of thing? This isn't going for that sort of thing at all. This is a proper drama. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I like the production value. You know, it's set in the 80s, but you know, there's not a whole lot they can do with production design and stuff, but they do kind of get the period across, I think, quite well. There are a couple of, there's 1 or 2 performance actors in it who I wasn't a fan of, but pretty much in general, I like the characters and the performances of them. Jake Henderson. Now, what's interesting is this film is credited very specifically as Jake Henderson's The Modern Way, The director being Giuseppe Montecolio. I've got that wrong. I'm sorry. But yeah, Jake Henderson as the author of the screenplay gets a proper credit. So I thought that's quite unusual to see that.
Yeah.
Whether it had originally been a play or something was the reason for that, I wasn't sure, but I don't think so from what I've looked into. Anyway, Jake Henderson is the guy who plays Terry. So he is the mod, and he sort of gives the history of it all, and he's like the key player in the drama, who's trying to sort of help out and stuff. And I thought it worked fine. The skinhead guys were properly nasty. I didn't not believe them as those with specifically the main guy, because the other two guys just sort of follow along, but the sort of leader of them, he was quite intense. And yeah, it was the sort of the main group. I say that I don't want to name names, but there was one member of the trio who were the sort of key protagonists that I just wasn't really a fan of. Reminded me of a performance in another film, and which I hadn't enjoyed. So that possibly is why. There's a funny thing is that it's not got jokes, really. It's not a comedy, but they do. Jake Henderson has put in this repetition of a particular line. So everybody says the same thing, and it's just like, oh, the second time it happens, it just seems like, oh my God, that's awkward. You've just put the same line, that somebody said it, but then it happens a third time, and you go, right, it's intentional for some reason. It's all to do because it's all to do with these drugs that go missing, blah blah blah. And so they keep saying about there's enough to put down a rhino.
Yes, yeah.
And they just keep saying it, and I was just like, it just that jarred. It didn't work. I don't think it worked in the way he was trying to get it to work, but it was unusual because this is a film without really any. There's a little bit of humor in there is, but it's mainly more not really kitchen sink, but you know what I'm getting at. It's like your sort of Shane Meadows This Is England is probably the closest sort of comparison that comes to mind. And yeah, so I wasn't expecting much. It's got no stars or anything in it. It's it's low budget production. Reminded me of something like Silent Night, which I enjoyed. Which that goes in, that's a film with sort of crime and horror, psychological horror and stuff, and this is much more straight. But yeah, I was very pleasantly surprised by it, to be honest.
It's just any time any of them open their mouths, I just did not like the script at all. And part of it is, it may be that bit went over my head a bit, with the whole repetition, because it jarred. Yeah,
I think it's an isolated incident. I think that's why it jarred.
There's other things, because it's other things sort of going on about.
Yeah,
it was annoying. Other lines of dialogue, like when what is the name of the girl? It is Danny, isn't it? Yeah. When she's hanging out with the skinheads, and they're going, "Oh, you're not going soft on us, are you?" And all this sort of stuff. Oh God, die! But there you go. It looks good for what it is. The period was well represented. I thought the music was pretty decent.
They couldn't afford much of the music, though, could they?
No,
so really. It's quite obvious. I think there's like one. Is there like one recognizable track in there? I think, and but
But it
music
feels
rights
of
are expensive.
It feels of the period. It's just anytime anyone opens their mouths, is what sort of annoyed me really with this one. So on that note, Rich, how are you going to score it?
Well, I'm going to give it a 7.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a 6. A 6 and a 7 for The Modern Way. Go check it out. Our next review is When Darkness Falls. Whilst trekking across the Highlands, Jess and Andrea separate and Andrea goes missing. Jess searches for her friend but stumbles into a far darker situation than she could possibly have imagined. Okay, Full disclosure, everyone. This was written by a friend of ours, Tom Jolliffe, who sometimes joins us on the show, but is mostly now a pretty prolific screenwriter.
Very prolific, yeah. He's getting quite a huge number of credits in a very short amount of time.
Indeed. I must admit, I like a lot of this. There are issues, but I don't think the script is really the problem. He does a nice setup at the beginning, which reminded me a bit of excuse me. Yeah, so this reminded me a bit of A History of Violence, of all things, because yeah, we start off with the antagonists of the story, or some of them, as they're sort of just clearing up one of their messes, shall we say, which is very much the way that sort of Cronenberg's film kicked off, and so we know right from the off, you know, that these are wrong uns. Then we get introduced to our two young ladies as they're sort of traversing, and I like the way, you know, we've got separate incidents happening, which kind of seem to be related at first, but may not be, you know, as things go on. And we get a weird sort of situation of like my enemy's enemy might be my friend. But it is an interesting one. He does something a bit different with it. What do you reckon?
Well, I'll get the issues out of the way first. Mm-hmm. It starts off with the sound quality, basically.
There are issues.
That opening conversation.
There's some omissions. There are definite omissions from the sound in this film. Yeah.
Well, the main issue for me at the start was all the dialogue was over record, you know, like ADR'd or added in post kind of thing, and it was really obvious. So which is jarring. I mean, I'm used to it in, you know, it's quite common in you know, in certain cinema regions, for instance. Hong Kong does it all the time. India does it all the time. But we're used to more in camera sort of, you know, not in camera, but you know, natural sounding. So it was a bit jarring.
It probably wasn't meant to be, was it? You know.
No. I'm sure. No,
it's something they've had to do.
Yeah, understandably, and I think as the movie progresses, I think that becomes less of an issue, because at first I thought, oh no, it's going to be like this the whole time, but then everything did start sounding a bit more natural. The second problem I've got with it is it's too long. I mean, it's an hour and 45 minutes pretty much, and I really think it could have been half hour shorter. The kind of setup and everything reminded me of The Retreat, which we only just covered, really. We, you know, basically with a couple of women who find themselves in the middle of nowhere, you know, under threat from sort of local guys or whatever, or sort of local guys. But you know, the story unfolds in quite a different fashion. But yeah, I think it could have done a bit with more pace. I thought it was quite interesting, that opening conversation. Now it's one of those things that starts out quite innocuous, and then you realise there's actually something really serious and dark happening. And the stuff with and here's the other issue is I'm pretty sure they weren't American, the actresses, and that's jarring as well, you know, the whole
I thought only one of them was American.
Well, maybe one of them, maybe that is the case, but I don't know.
Their other accent was really dodgy, but
yeah, it might be that only one of them, but it was definitely sort of jarring to me there, the sort of faux American accent. You know, it didn't really, you know, it's set in Scotland, but they have to, you know, for sales reasons or whatever, I guess. Exactly. I don't know. This seems to be the common thing of you have to make one or two of your characters Americans. So that jarred a bit, but I thought the filming locations were nice. It's set in this very, very isolated Highlands village. Nobody around really. You don't really see any extras and stuff in the movie, which kind of adds to the general sort of sense of isolation. But so I quite like that it's not a kind of a setting that we see very often. I don't think that sort of, you know, very sort of isolated rural kind of village kind of thing. Even in ones where even in films like I think it was A Village in the Woods, you didn't actually see much of the village. You saw like a couple of buildings or whatever. Here we get to see them walking through and the signage and stuff, and it adds to
something like A Lonely Place to Die or something like that.
Absolutely, that and The Ledge and stuff were films that were coming to mind when I was watching this.
Was that one the Alien was it Alien Pandemic or something? That was pretty bleak as well,
I know, I remember the one you're talking about. And I get where you're coming from. So I wasn't quite on board with it, but then I quite liked when it went in a different direction. I thought that was quite interesting, and that's when you sort of really have to sort of be sitting up and paying attention, because things sort of shift around quite quickly, and I quite like the sort of 70s-ish style conclusion. It's you don't get, it doesn't end like a typical kind of Hollywood. No. It's not like a Hollywood ending, basically. And so I quite like how that played out and stuff. So there's pluses and minuses, but overall I did quite like it. I say it's just probably a couple of budgetary limitation issues and casting related concerns of just personal ones, really.
The biggest sort of the most glaring issue, and it is that down to budget, unfortunately, is around the climax. There's a shotgun which is completely silent, and it's a real shame.
That was what I was wondering. I didn't know. Was this like an incomplete version that we saw? I mean, all evidence indicates that this is that the screener we watched is the version that's being released. It was the big moment, and there was no sound at all. It was very odd.
It was very strange. So, even if somebody just went bang, it would have added a bit more to it. But even then, because there's a handgun in play earlier as well, I'm pretty sure that was silent for a few times when it shouldn't have been as well. Which is a shame, because it built up to a nice sort of cathartic moment. And then it was like, oh, okay, it's very strange. But other than that, I think there are some novel elements to this. It's not your sort of typical, it's a women in peril film. There's a bit more sort of going on. And on that note, Rich, how are you going to score it?
I am going to give it a 6, I think.
I'm going to join you on a 6. Yep, 2 6s for When Darkness Falls. Go check it out. Our next review is Martyrs Lane. A young girl called Leah lives in a large vicarage, a house which during the day is bustling with people, but at night is a dark and empty place. A small nightly visitor brings Leah comforts, but soon she will realize that a little visitor offers knowledge that might be very, very dangerous. Let me just ask you a question first, Rich. This isn't released by Acorn, is it?
Yes.
It is?
Yes.
That's a shame. Because on this podcast before, I've said that, I was so impressed with the films they were putting out that I would gladly just slam in a disc and watch it without any trepidation at all. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to eat those words because I did not enjoy this one bit. I struggled to keep awake, to be honest, watching this. I just did not get on with it. I mean, I've said before that, these sort of films where we have a young protagonist are not my cup of tea. The exception was probably the boy behind the door that we did recover. But this sort of thing where the kid is the main protagonist is a turn off for me. It really is. I struggle. That and sort of pregnant women in horror films. I just find it sort of a cheap sort of emotional sort of grab sort of thing. But no. So I really struggled with this. I really did. And I think it was well made. I got no issues with the technical side of the film at all, or even the acting. It's just the story was so slow and boring for me. How about you, Rich?
Well, it was not what I was expecting, I'll be honest. It was, I'm just looking up the director, and it looks like this was an expansion from a short, because there's a film called Martyrs Lane on her filmography from 2 years previous to this. So I wasn't expecting it to be a British movie, so that was quite surprising. And I wasn't expecting it to be basically not a horror movie, because it's very, very I mentioned sort of with regard to the modern life, like kitchen sink drama. Well, this is really kitchen sink drama kind of movie. Really, it's very domestic drama, family life. There's there's supernatural elements that come in, but they're not really hugely horrific, or scary. Scary. It's more it's, you could reference something like Let the Right One In to an extent, but that is more of that is still a proper horror movie. The sort of atmosphere, and the stuff that happens and the way it's presented and stuff. Here it is more of a drama. It's intended to be, the horror is intended to be sort of an is it a psychological kind of thing? There's a bit towards the end which sort of leans into like more horror, but I think there's less like horror, what I would call like horrific scenes in this than in your average, general, even short film. There's not a lot. It's mostly this sort of religious family, and the young girl and her place in the family. She's feeling a bit lost. Doesn't have a good relationship with her mother or her sister. Different things going on there, but the only person who she's got sort of any sort of connection to is her father. And then this little girl comes along, which reminded me of, because this came out I think on Shudder last year, but there was another film that came out probably last year, but in the cinema. It was either last year or early this year. The French film Petit Maman, which Céline Sciamma, which is, as I haven't seen it, I hear it's fantastic, but it is, as far as I'm aware, it's also about a young girl meeting another girl, and there's is she a real, is she living, or is there something else going on and stuff like that. So it's very fantastical, sort of loosely fantastical drama, and that seemed to be exactly what this film was trying to do as well. From what so I'm very interested to see, because I'd heard obviously Petit Maman was really good, so I'm interested to see it and sort of compare to see whether that initial instinct of mine is right, that it's kind of doing a similar thing. But yeah, I was kind of hoping, I guess, that some of the religious stuff would get explored a bit more. Yeah, because I thought initially that they were a cult or something, but they're not. They're like, I think they're like Church of England or whatever. So because the father is actually a church vicar. Yeah. But yeah, I thought the strength of the film is the girls. The two girls are really excellent. I mean, I just watched Kenobi, the Obi-Wan Kenobi series on Netflix, and there's child actors in there who are not good. So poor, I feel bad saying it, but the casting was not good, and these girls sort of knock out of the ballpark, knock the socks off of that. So I was really impressed with the girls. I thought, especially as they've got to handle some quite mature, unsettling kind of stuff. Yeah. One of them's got blood, coming out of her nose and stuff, and she's got all wounds and things and stuff. So yeah, I would say it's probably the least horror film, least like horror genre style film that I've seen from Shudder.
Yeah.
So it made me quite surprised that it was. But at the same time, it's not really kind of a movie kind of film either. So I think you've got to. I think people need to know what they're getting into. They need to. I mean, it's sold. The cover looks like a horror movie and stuff, and I think people will be disappointed if they're going in expecting like a full-fledged kind of horror movie. So I think as long as you know that it's like family kitchen sink drama kind of stuff, I think you'll be okay.
Yeah, I think more Good Night Mommy, but with sort of more Catholic overtones, basically.
Yeah.
There you go.
I guess I haven't seen Good Night Mommy. I have heard of it, but yeah, there's a lot of film. I think there's a lot of films that do this kind of thing.
Yeah,
with,
we had another
horror
one
kids
recently, didn't we? I'm pretty sure we had another one like this. One set in
Yes.
the snow. One, where the dad's always away, and he's got a stepmom. We covered that one recently.
Wasn't Let It Snow, was it? No, that was a different one. Oh, sorry, I can't remember.
No, yeah, my name escapes me at the moment.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, we've covered this sort of thing.
Yeah, that would say that I don't mind it. I think as long as if a film has got kids in sort of lead roles or main principal or key supporting roles and stuff, it's a bit risky. But I think in this case, I think as far as I was concerned, I thought the kids did a great job, and the film is a very solid drama.
I've got no issue with it. As I said, no issue with the acting or anything like that.
No.
But I think when you're dealing with these sort of kids in peril films, it does sort of limit as to what they could actually do as well, because of the kids. There's certain things they can't have kids doing. So,
well, The Good Son was with Macaulay Culkin's another one that came to mind, because that's that's a different dynamic, but that is mainly about Elijah Wood, being I don't know how old he was at the time, probably like 10 or 12 or something. Him and Macaulay Culkin, and there's a lot of sort of serious stuff going on with them, and they're again in that sort of quite often these stories take place sort of out in the woods or by the away from, not in towns and cities and stuff, and I guess that adds to the sort of isolation and sort of peril, exactly. And sort of free-spirited, which I guess goes all the way back to Lord of the Flies and all that kind of stuff of kids sort of being let off
to their own devices,
sort of left to their own devices and stuff. And that's what's happening with the young girl here. Is she's basically left to sort of do her own thing, let her imagination run wild. Doesn't really have many people to sort of play with. The religion, I guess, has isolated her as well to an extent, although they don't really sort of go into that. But no, I think it's fine. I think I think you just have to know that it's not you're not going to get, it's not even like Paper House or that kind of thing, but it's it's okay, it's all right.
How are you going to score it?
I am going to give this one a 6 as well.
Okay, I'm going down to a 5 for this one. A 5 and a 6 for Martyrs Lane. Go check it out. Our next review is Gatlopp, Hell of a Game. A group of old friends reunite for a nostalgic evening of fun and games and decide to play a drinking game. But it's quickly revealed that this game comes with supernatural stakes. Best film of the week, Rich. By a mile. By a mile. I absolutely love this.
I agree.
This was very well written. Great cast. Really, they gelled really well. The interactions were great. The editing style, I absolutely loved. There's bits where the main character's on the phone to his ex-wife, and it's like a split screen, and yet they're sort of mirroring each other's positions and body language and stuff. Lovely, absolutely superb. The jazzercise video bit, absolutely amazing. This put a big smile on my face, big time. How about yourself?
Yeah, well, I liked it from the opening. It's got this real high quality thing to it. It's got a main sequence. It's got a proper main titles credit sequence. Even the end titles, they've made a nice effort to make them sort of a bit stylish and stand out. The editing's really, I love all the transitions and wipes and stuff. It's playful, it's bright, it feels like a bigger budget movie at the start, but then it does sort of settle into, you realize that it is quite a low budget movie, because basically after the initial scenes, pretty much the whole thing takes place in a living room. In a living room. So which kind of reminded me of I think it was Evil Bong, from one of Charles Band's film, which really sort of struck me, because it was kind of like that. It was basically they're going to film it in an apartment or whatever, and they're just going to stay there. And you don't normally have. I mean, we have films that are set in single locations and stuff, but not usually in quite that way. So it kind of made me feel more like a sitcom. It was like a sitcom kind of thing. So this is again a film that sort of is kind of sitcom-y in its kind of setup, although it's very cinematically filmed. There's not a lot of fantastic. I was thinking about Dave Made a Maze as well as kind of sort of something bigger, but that
especially
had a much bigger,
especially with that credit sequence at the beginning. Yeah, definitely.
But that film, when stuff starts to happen, it's really, big and elaborate, kind of creative sort of set piece stuff going on in that movie, because we do venture out into another world. Whereas in this, we very much just stay in the apartment, but. Yeah. I enjoyed it. I thought the characterization was excellent. The characters were great fun. The dialogue was really sharp and, witty and snappy, and it's all in less than, it's all over in 80 minutes. It's a really sharp little package.
I really like the use of the flashbacks as well. A lot of it sort of centers around this sort of party that was held in the same house like 8 years previously, and there was some pivotal moments in each of their lives happening at that time, and it does a good job of sort of juxtaposing between the two. I thought that was really cool as well. This was just brilliant. It was very inventive. I mean, people are going to look at it and go, oh, it's a horror version of Jumanji, and to a certain degree, yes, of course it is. It's a board game. We've had a few board game movies. We've covered one in our throwbacks, one with the Malaysia Disco, which I can't remember the name of.
Oh gosh,
that one set in Spain. Yeah,
and there was one called Beyond the Gates, which was like it was like a videotape board game one with Barbara Crampton.
And there's another one as well, which I covered on my other website, and I can't remember what it's called now. But it's the same sort of thing. If you don't do something within an hour, your head explodes or something in that one.
Oh right.
It's quite interesting.
One thing I do think is detrimental, because I wasn't looking forward to watching this.
All right.
And it's the title. I think it's a really off-putting title. You just think, I thought it was like a foreign language, which not necessarily in itself bad, but I was just thinking, what does that mean and stuff, and that does. It is explained in the film, but
I thought it was going to be a biopic about some Dutch footballer.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that actually makes sense. Yeah, hell of a game.
Someone like Ruud Gullit or something. Some guy called Gatlopp. I don't know who he is.
That's a really good. That's very good. Yeah. But yeah, what you've got here is something I would liken it. I mean, this was put out by, actually, the production was actually supported by Signature Entertainment, which is quite unusual. But they previously, they put out loads of stuff, obviously, but Werewolves Within, I think had a similar energy and brightness and humor and stuff going on. That I would definitely say if somebody saw Werewolves Within and had a good time with that, I think I would definitely like this. I mean, it's a completely different kind of movie, but still very snappy sort of humor and horror and that all mixed together.
It is, yeah. I thought it really worked.
And again,
really
the cast are the same as pretty much all the films we've been looking at today. The cast are unknown. I'm not familiar with any of them. I've not seen them in anything, and I just thought they were excellent. It's four people essentially trying to carry the film for there's like a fifth as well, but there's basically four people carrying the film, with no real cutaways to big visual effects sequences or anything. It's everything involves them, and they have to sort of you have to be engaged with them, which is similar to say what they were doing with like the Modern Way or or Martyrs Lane and stuff. But it works best, I think, in this. This is the one of, for me, this is one of the best films I've seen this year, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely in my current top 10. Yeah, and it is a film I'm gonna. Is this actually getting a physical release, or is it another?
Good question. It is. Let's have a look. Just check in. Digital only at the moment. So a bit like with one of our other favourite films this year, Ultrasound. Yeah, digital only. So I guess it relies on if the film gets traction on digital, then we might see a physical release. I mean, this is so nicely shot with with colour and stuff. I think Blu-ray would suit it really nicely.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd want it on my collection. That's for sure.
Quick aside there on Blu-ray, note of Blu-rays, just mentioning Martyrs Lane, not a Blu-ray release for that one, which is quite against the norm for those Acorn releases.
Exactly. That's why I asked if it was an Acorn release, because it didn't sort of fit the usual what we've seen from them to date.
No, but hopefully, fingers crossed, this one will get good word of mouth and get sort out, because I think, unfortunately, without any huge marketing and stuff, so like a lot of these films that we talk about, this will just get lost, and that title is just going to really just not appeal to people. I think what will help is if it gets picked up by Netflix. I think that could do well for it. Quite a few signature films do go to Netflix, so I mean, signature send films to Netflix and Amazon, but I think this particular film would do better on Netflix.
I think it will be,
because it will be more easily served, through the algorithms and stuff.
Absolutely. And on that note, Rich, how are you going to score it?
This is a high 8 for me.
Yeah, definitely an 8. This is brilliant stuff. It really is. It's just a good time, good time horror movie, basically. Go check it out. 2 8s from us for Gatlopp. Our short shot this week is Gabriel. In this one, a French cop turns vigilante. There's a lot more going on than that, but there you go. This film starts out in very bleak fashion, Rich. Probably the bleakest I've seen for a while. And then we sort of jump forward to when this guy's now a cop with his 2 partners on a drug bust, which goes a little bit wrong. And this seems to sort of spur him on to do other stuff, or he was already doing this other stuff and this was like part of his agenda, one of the two. But some good fight scenes in this. It's probably one of the longest shorts we've covered. It's about 36 minutes, I believe.
29.
29 minutes. But yeah, there's quite a lot going on. How did you get on with this?
I liked it. I'm just it was just when you get towards the end and you realize it's actually not going to resolve itself, that this is what seems to be a proof of concept. That was a bit disappointing, because there's so much development, so much time is being spent, and then you're getting far along in the story and you're thinking, well, there's only a few minutes left. I mean, there's not really anywhere this can go. So yes, that's sort of par for the course with some of these shorts. That's why they get made. There was a film that Eric Jacobus did a few years ago. I can't remember the name of it now, but that did a similar thing, where it was setting up this him play. Oh, Ness, it was. So he was setting up this character and he was beginning an investigation, and there's all sorts of stuff going on, and then it ends on a almost a to be continued kind of note, and that's what we've got here. So that is a bit jarring. You can't. So it's. I would have liked a bit more of a, even if you keep it open but sort of resolve it a little bit, I would have preferred that. But this is not. This hasn't been made for this kind of reason, as far as I can tell, because there's very little information about this movie or this short out there. I stumbled on it when I was looking up some work by the actor and writer Olivier Sa, because I'm still looking out for Deviants to get a release in the public domain.
Oh yeah.
And he was the writer of that. He collaborated with Godfrey Roitvaart on that, which did very well at the Fighting Spirit Film Festival. But that did a similar thing. That was a kind of a world building short that didn't have really any resolution. So whether this one is a new project or something that's been around for a while, I'm not sure, but I'm expecting that perhaps it's something new, because there are no IMDb listings for it or anything. There's no information anywhere. I think it's directed by Mohar Elachi, who's like Olivia Sarr, is a stunt guy. Done stunt and fight coordination and all that sort of stuff in big budget movies, low budget movies, all sorts. These very experienced people going out on their own. This is under the Cinemaction group brand, which is a bit like the Real Deal stunt team. Basically, a bunch of stunt people getting together and working on their own projects and that. And again, like Eric Jacobus and the stunt people. The centerpiece kind of fight scene in the sort of garage set fight scene is pretty cool. It's got some nice moments. There's an element in there. I don't know whether to mention it or not, but there's an element in there that seems to me to be a nod to Lone Wolf and Cub. And there's a really, before that all kicks off, there's a really sort of fast-paced wooden dummy.
Oh yeah, that is one of the most intense wooden dummy bits I've ever seen.
So that was really good. Yeah, so Olivia Sarr is the writer, he's the writer of the film, but he's also the lead character, Gabriel. And the film has a subtitle in French, which I put into the translator, and it kind of came out as Angel's Bite. So I guess it's like he's a sort of a guardian angel, but there's like a sort of a sting in sort of thing. And the sort of concept of the film reminded me, there was a Steven Seagal movie called A Good Man, where Seagal in the background of the story, he's going around with a sword, being a vigilante and sort of taking people out, and that's basically what is happening here. It's the same kind of thing. But it's a dark and gloomy. It's quite a dark and gloomy film. It's a hard film to enjoy, although there is that nice sort of bit of action in the middle. Yeah.
The first half of this felt like a proper French procedural film. I think they nailed the characters really well. The setup and everything. Thought that was excellent. This whole drug busting.
Yeah.
It was straight out of a proper sort of French feature film. And then it sort of switches to something which is a bit more familiar for, sort of short film, sort of fight scenes kind of thing. It was a bit sort of jarring, to be honest. Even with that sort of prologue bit, which sort of sets things up a little bit. I still felt the sort of juxtaposition between the drug bust and then the vigilante bit to be quite jarring, because it's like, where the fuck did this come from? A little bit.
Well, I felt a similar way about when, in terms of the film's Salvages, which starts out kind of one way and then got sort of kicks off into that incredible action sequence. But
the finale of that was weird, wasn't it?
So I think that there's a similar thing sort of going on, and also in terms of how this one unfolds and wrapping it up, but sort of leaving it open. I think a good example of kind of what I've got in mind is Jester Must Die, because that was very much a sort of setup. Yep. But it felt quite self-contained as well. It had a bit of a conclusion on it, and that was a similar kind of length. And I think that's kind of what I was hoping for from this.
The only sort of silly bit for me in this is when he's doing his very intense sort of wooden dummy bit, and then he sort of goes over to his wall and he's got all these photos of these guys on, And then he starts crossing them out one by one because obviously he's done them in already.
Well, he's doing that for our benefit. Exactly. That doesn't make any sense to do that.
It doesn't make any sense for him to do it right then and there. It's like, oh, I forgot to cross these guys.
Yeah,
out.
I forgot to do it.
It's like someone who's forgotten to eat the chocolates out of his advent calendar. Oh yeah, I've got 5 days worth of chocolates to eat. It's like it just. It just seems a bit absent-minded, shall we say? And you're right, yeah. And it wouldn't have made any difference if they'd already been crossed out, and then he just crossed out the latest one. We would have known what he was on about. You know what I mean?
Well, they could have just been pre-crossed, and they look out and okay, there's that one guy who we're going to focus on. Okay, we know what the thing is, but yeah,
exactly, same thing.
It's rough around the edges. It is rough around the edges, but I think there's potential here, and I do, as with a lot of these things, we generally don't see anything further. So I hope we do. I hope they do get to sort of develop this one a bit more. If it is something they're actively trying to work on, and it's not something that's been sitting around. Because again, I've got no verification on when it was actually produced. But I thought it was interesting, and I was glad. I managed to. I was glad I stumbled on it, basically. And I just say that lack of resolution just sort of jarred a bit, but it is worth seeing, especially if you're a fan, and if you like sort of because the French do sort of gritty police procedurals and stuff do really well, don't they? So I think this definitely fits into that.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. We don't score the shorts, but we do recommend you check them out, and we shall put a link for this in the footnotes below. Go check it out. Our DTV throwback this week is Ambulancen, aka Ambulance. 2 brothers commit a robbery out of desperation. However, when it all goes wrong, they decide to steal an ambulance, but soon come to realize they are not alone. Have you seen the Michael Bay version yet, Rich?
I have not. No, I'm very interested to do so.
Yeah, same here. It's released here in the UK on Blu-ray and DVD. Tomorrow, the day after we record. So it is something hopefully I'm going to catch up with very soon. I had no idea that film was a remake of a Norwegian film, but there you go.
I think it's Dutch.
Is it?
I think so. I might be wrong.
Yeah, right. Let's have a quick.
Danish, sorry.
Danish, right. Okay, so we've split the difference. Okay, so it's a Danish film. Obviously a lot smaller in scope than Bay's film. It's probably an hour shorter than Bay's film as well.
It is literally an hour shorter. Yeah.
An hour shorter. So this is quite a tight little thriller. We have the 2 brothers. We don't see the robbery, but we know it goes wrong. They come running out because they went in sort of promising not to shoot anyone. Of course, we hear gunfire. They come out, there's an ambulance which is in the process of being loaded, and they steal it, leaving the doctor behind, but unbeknownst to them, they're carrying a patient and a nurse as they hare around this city being chased by the police. I thoroughly enjoyed this. It was, very fast paced, some really good sort of interactions and, dynamics that come out of the story. I thought it worked really well. How about you?
Yeah, I saw that this is, until very recently, this has never been available in the UK before. It was a film that I imported from a Thai DVD of.
Oh yeah.
And I don't have many of my discs left from that period, and this was one that made such an impression on me that I just had to keep hold of it. And to be honest, it's not one I've revisited loads. I just remember when I originally watched it that I was just really impressed by it. And especially not having seen really many Danish movies or or any films from sort of that region at the time, and so it made a big impression on me. And I wondered when Ambulance was being promoted and stuff, and I was thinking, it's not, is it? Because it's quite unusual to see a Danish movie being picked up and given such a big Hollywood kind of remake. And then I looked up, and there you go, there it is. So I guess that kind of validated, obviously I wasn't the only one who was impressed by it, because loads of other people obviously were, including Michael Bay, to say there's a central we're going to do something different with it, but the central conceit, or the central concept is something that they feel they can work with. In this movie, they're brothers. In the remake, I think it's quite a different sort of setup and dynamic going on. So, but I like that, because then it'll basically be a completely different movie. What we've got here is a film that's very much about ethical dilemmas and stuff, and family dynamics. We've got these two guys, one of whom is an experienced criminal, the other is kind of not at all, very much a rookie, but they're being driven by the desire to help their mother, who is been
very ill,
very ill, sort of abandoned by the medical, not necessarily abandoned, but their view is that she's been abandoned, because they basically the doctors basically said there's nothing more we can do. So they're driven, they're acting out of desperation. But then the flip side of that is, like you say, they take the ambulance, which then they then find they've got somebody there with them who is themselves in dire straits, and how they deal with that ethical dilemma of are we going to put our own desires and our mother first over this other person, and that's where all sort of the conflicts and that come out of. And then we've got the nurse in the back as well, who sort of adds to that dynamic. So it's kind of a road movie, it's that two guys and a girl kind of road movie setup, and it's fast paced and reminded me of The Chase, the Charlie Sheen movie. Which was again, that's sort of more that's kind of the big fast helicopters chasing them, kind of Michael Bay sort of thing that we'll get, I think, in the remake. But this is we do get a big chase sequence at first, but then it kind of they're just sort of ambling along really after that. There's not a lot of attention, they're sort of hiding out the way and whatnot, and there's a little bit of an action beat at the conclusion, bit of a oh geez, there's a whole bit with the guy sort of hanging out of the back of the ambulance and whatever, and I was thinking he would, I'm thinking he would have never survived that, but it's it's cracking. I mean, and it's only an hour and 15 minutes long. Like say, the remake is 2 hours 20, 2 hours 15, something like that. So which is fairly typical for Michael Bay, but but this is it's fast paced, a bit like Gatlopp, just sort of gets on with it. There's no fat on it. The performances are really good, the characterization, and it's just really solid. So I was over the moon to see it had finally turned up, probably because of the remake. That it turned up on Netflix.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely worth checking out, even if you are a fan, or even not, if you're a fan of Michael Bay or not. It's definitely a curiosity factor of.
I think it's nothing. It's going to be nothing like the Michael Bay one. I mean, you couldn't get to a film that looked less like a Michael Bay movie than this. I would say this is very sort of stripped down, very European.
Yeah.
And I think you could easily watch. I mean, Sam, I'm speaking without actually having seen the remake, but you could probably watch the two back to back, and you'll just feel like you're getting completely different experiences. I would expect they probably you wouldn't get that sort of feeling of repetition. And even if you have seen the remake and you're more inclined towards that style, give this a go anyway. Just see a different kind of take on the material. I think it's well worth seeing.
See if you can figure out what Michael Bay saw in this in the first place to want to remake it. Yeah, so there you go. This is currently on Netflix, so go check it out. And that is the end of this week's show. So thanks to Rich for joining me and having to endure a couple of these films. But we'll always have Gatlopp, so there you go.
Oh yeah, Gatlopp's great.
Don't forget to check out our Facebook and Twitter pages at the DTV Digest. Also check us out on the DTV Short Shots, a podcast where Rich puts together all the short films we're going to look at, and also the Twitter page where Rich puts a new short every evening. Thank you for listening. Tune in next time.
Thank you for listening to the DTV Digest. Let us know your thoughts in the comments and tune in again next time.